In the tapestry of life, where every thread holds a story, America in Black and White emerges as a haven for the voices echoing through the heart of our communities. In this podcast, we wade through the rivers of our collective experiences, celebrating the vibrant hues of change brought forth by the whispers of hope and the roars of action. It's more than just a conversation. It's a journey into the heart of our society, illuminated by the light of those daring to dream and do. Join us, and let your voice be the melody that guides us toward a dawn where every color finds its place in the masterpiece of our shared destiny. Together, let's paint a future brimming with the positives that dwell in our minds and the actions that shape our world.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of America in Black and White, where we are coloring conversations on the canvas of America. Tonight, we're doing a very special show where we will be discussing Black media, the Black community, and the impact of telling our story. For those of you that are new to the show, let me just start out and I will tell you guys who I am. I am Charles Zachary King, and I am a visionary media leader and public advocate whose work sits in the intersection of truth telling, civic education, and communal healing. As the founder and CEO of America in Black and White and AMIBW, the magazine, Charles has built a legacy driven platform that empowers marginalized communities through educational storytelling, advocacy journalism, and actionable civic engagement. With a gift for breaking down complex political and social processes into clear, accessible language, Charles has become a trusted voice for viewers seeking clarity in a chaotic world. His special episodes, often centered on urgent public issues, offer not just information but transformation, equipping everyday people with the tools to navigate systems, claim their power, and protect their communities. Charles's work is rooted in service, of resilience, and a deep commitment to legacy, whether hosting interviews with changemakers or scripting segments that illuminate historical truths. He centers the lived experience of those most affected by systemic dysfunction. His leadership is not performative, it's protective, purposeful, and profoundly personal. In every appearance, Charles brings clarity, conviction, and compassion. His presence on American Black and White is more than a hosting role. It's a mission to educate, elevate, and empower. So, as we get into this episode, I want to make sure that you guys understand that as we get into this, what's the impacts and what this means for each and every one of us. Good evening, family. Welcome to American Black and White, where truth isn't just spoken, it's lived. Tonight's episode is personal, it's prophetic, it's political, and it's overdue. We're living in a time where representation is sold like a product packaged in press releases, paraded through media cycles, and performed by people who do not speak for us. They wear our pain like a costume, they quote our struggle like a slogan, but when it's time to build, to heal, to legislate, to invest, they vanish. So tonight, we're drawing a line. We're naming names. We're reclaiming our voice because Black people are not a monolith. We're not waiting for permission to tell our stories. We are the architects of our own legacy. And if you're not building with us, you're building against us. I'm your host and your guest, Charles Zachary King, founder of America in Black and White, president of America in Black and White, and the voice behind AMIBW, the magazine. I'm here not just to speak, but to testify. So let's get into it. So I'll tell you guys that I am definitely going to be going off my notes that I have here because we have a lot to unpack. And so this unpacking is something that our community more than just need, but it's what we're going to learn and what we're going to do after this in executions to make sure that we're doing what we're doing in order to build not just ourselves, but our communities. So I'm going to start with the performance representation. Now, what happened back the during the period of 2020? We're talking about post 2020 now, and we're going to talk about we've got the corporate DEI rollbacks. Okay, we've got the political lip service versus policy neglect, and also we've got the media's obsession with black trauma over black triumph. And we're also going to talk about two people that are in the media that really sends a very bad but false message about not just black media, but the black community in general. We're going to talk about Stephen A. Smith and Van Jones as examples of performative allyship. Okay. So when we talk about this corporate DEI, right? Now, we know that after the racial reckoning of 2020, corporations rushed to pledge support for DEI. That's diversity, equity, and inclusion. Billions were promised, task force were formed, and black talent was spotlighted. But by 24 and 25, many of these same companies quietly reversed course. Now, when we talk about that, we're talking about places like, just to name a few, we'll talk about Target. We could talk about Walmart. We could talk about just recently McDonald's. And there's a few other major corporations that have actually done this. But the points to this whole thing is this was done primarily because of legal pressure and the political climate. So, under President Trump's executive orders targeting race based initiatives, companies like IBM, McDonald's, and Bank of America began renaming or dismantling DEI departments. Optics over outcome. Many firms replace diversity language with terms like culture of belonging or inclusive talent, signaling a shift from measurable equity goals to vague branding. The impact on Black professionals. These rollbacks disproportionately affect Black employees, suppliers, and creatives who were promised access, visibility, and investment. So now, as we talk about that, the way this is framed is that DEI is primarily made up of what supposedly is building the Black community. What is building Black people? What is building the Black media? Now, this is coming from mainstream media. This is not coming from Black media. And so this is where we have a problem with that, is because we have nobody that's actually telling our story the way this needs to be told. Now, when we talk about DEI had an enormous amount of things that you can say would be inclusive for each and every individual, from Black and brown people to Asian and Hispanic people, Latino people, even the LGBTQ community. So supposedly, quote unquote, under this umbrella, everybody other than what you would consider to be a white person is grouped in this category, meaning that we didn't have the capabilities, don't have the capabilities of actually building our own, learning to function on our own, or being profitable in society in order to make it in society. Now, is the understanding how this goes from a political perspective. Politics is one thing because politics is very, very dangerous. And the reason why I'm saying that is dangerous is because those that get fed are those that actually do the bidding for the top 1% in the country. Now, we can say that these programs were put in place in order to make everybody happy and to create safe spaces for everyone. Now, remember, we're talking about post 2020. And at that same time, remember, Donald Trump was occupying the White House at that time. And at that same time, when he tried to do this before, a lot of these companies pushed back on that. They refused to do this, and they wanted to stay relevant. They wanted to stay prevalent to all of those that were getting services from them, and also showing that they could work with folk that did not look like them, that could make spaces that much better for the rest of the country. Now, it's a fact that we know who the main benefactors of DEI really supports. We all know this. So in that process of knowing that, we still, that is, I'm talking about Black people, especially if you were a Black man, you still had to be 8 times as better as someone that did not even have a college education, which means you're being underpaid. So at any rate, with that being said, this is what this was supposed to be about, but it did not work that way. And the reason it did not work that way is because it was never going to be intended to be that way. Because once we got this occupier back in the White House as of January 20th of 2025, everything that he said prior to taking office when they released Project 2025 back in the year of 2023, the fall of 23. And when they released that, there were folk on the other side of the aisle, that Republican side of the aisle, that were running around and saying that that was not true. They didn't know what people were talking about. They had no idea. But those that knew better were trying to inform each and every individual that they knew, and was asking them to please do not vote for this guy. So the people that did that, they got what they wanted. But in this whole premise of talking about the DEI situation, DEI never really benefited Black people. But we didn't have the media to actually talk this up and get this out to people so people can really understand what was the real premise, what was the real purpose of this. So what we saw is we saw a wave of corporate solidarity in 2020, but solidarity without accountability is just PR. Because when DEI becomes a liability instead of a legacy, it's our communities, the Black communities, that pay the price. And the reason why when I say that, what that means is that we're the ones that are being that are losing more jobs than anybody else. A lot of people are losing jobs, but there are more Black people that are losing jobs because they're saying, "Oh, you're DEI hired." This man is destroying the federal government because he says DEI means that you're not qualified. But that didn't mean that Black people weren't qualified. But the stigma is stuck on the Black community. So if the stigma is stuck on the Black community, but no one is actually out in front of this to say, hey, this is where this belongs and this is how this goes. We need larger magnifiers than just small places. I mean, a lot of us can try and get this out, but if we don't have larger spaces, it's not really going to get out to the masses the way we want it to. But that does not mean that we don't try. It does not mean that we don't try. Because, when all is said and done, we know who's qualified, we know who's not qualified, but that's not the way it's seen throughout the lens of mainstream media. Now, we talk about Black media itself. There's not enough outlets that are large enough to project to a larger audience in order to do these kind of news stories. This is something that I think we all have to think about, going forward as we have this time now and we have the bad state of America where we have to take the opportunity and the time to do the things that we know we have to do. When we talk about this political lip service versus policy and neglect, the context of this is this. Politicians often speak the language of justice, especially during election cycles, but fail to deliver meaningful policy change once in office. This is not just one group or one segment of people. This primarily looks like, and the way I've seen it, it looks like that's all politicians because they're being paid to do bidding for other folk, the people that's at that top 1%. That's what they're paid to do. So they come and they deliver us these wonderful speeches when they're on the campaign stump. And we go and what do? We go and we vote for these people. They get in office. They don't remember you. They don't remember when they had to do that last campaign. But if they're in the Senate, when it's coming up to that last year when they got this rerun for office, then you start seeing the same campaign pop up again. And they pop up and they want to tell you these things to gaslight you and make you say, I need to vote for this person. He's doing a good job. She's doing a good job. And they've been our senator all this time. They've been your senator all this time, but you've yet to see any change in the Black community. So, what is your senator doing? Your senator is only doing bidding against you. We have those that we send that's in the House Representatives. They bid, they do their campaigns every 2 years because it's a 2-year term for them. You don't see them after they get in office, but when it's coming down to the end of that first year, coming into that second year, you start seeing them again. They resurface. They resurface and they're telling you the same old tired message with no results. Don't plan to get no results. How many of you out here that are listening right now can honestly say, those of you that live in Black communities, that you have seen your senator or your congressman bring jobs to your community? You can't say that. The jobs that you see them bring to your community are the gentrification. The gentrification. Because those contractors that are coming through that's doing the bid for the city and the state, those people don't come from the neighborhood for one thing, but those people are doing their jobs, right? So if they're doing their jobs, then why are you not asking your congressman or your senator, why are you not doing your job? But again, this is where Black media comes into play. This is where we need to be shouting this from the rooftop, going to the top of the mountain and just screaming this out as loud as we possibly can. The thing is, we don't have large enough platforms to reach the whole entire masses. Can't reach them, but if we can't have mass reachability, we're unable to reach the majority of the folk that we need to reach. There's some places where they have larger media markets than others, and depending upon where you are, those pockets, they get to be pretty deep, pretty big. Now, if you're living in a place like, let's say, St. Louis, Missouri, or you live in Chicago, Illinois, those are large media markets. If you live in Texas, that's a large media market. If you live in New York, that's a large media market. If you live in California, we know that's a large media market. But markets outside of that, the pockets are so small that normally that a lot of places, depending upon where you are, especially if you're on border states, you get channeling from other states. And that's telling you right there that the media market is not that big. But we have got to start uplifting, supporting, and building Black media. Don't care if it's a podcast, don't care if it's a magazine. If there are any newspapers that are still out and existing, we have to support these because we have to amplify these stories. We have to tell this to the masses. A lot of times, a lot of us may post a lot of things, whether it's blogs, on websites, social media, whatever have you. It has a little reach, but it doesn't have the reach and the impact that we need it to have. We need to get a whole lot better by increasing our power and sinking some serious investments into Black media. We have to do this. And so the key points to this lip service and neglect is, the symbolic gestures. That is, statements like Black Lives Matter or Juneteenth proclamations are common but rarely backed by legislation that addresses systemic inequities. Neglect in practice, from underfunded HBCUs to stalled police reform bills, the gap between rhetoric and the results is glaring. Now, strategic silence, that is, politicians may speak up during safe moments, but remain silent during crises, especially when it threatens their donor base or political alliances. And that means that they need to stay in office more so than they need to actually do the job that you sent them to do. When we talk about these symbolic gestures or statements like the Black Lives Matters or Juneteenth proclamations, well, remember, Juneteenth just became a holiday. Now, under the person that's occupying the White House right now, that person is trying to roll back holidays and saying that we have too many holidays in America. And so I don't know if it has happened yet or not, or if it's going to, but there are some holidays that have been rolled back. We talk about Black Lives Matter, and he wants to tie Black Lives Matter into an Antifa moment where it says that they're working together to overthrow the government. I mean, these are things that are amplified in mainstream media, but again, we don't have enough power to push back on that when we should, because this is up to us. This is up to us to do this because we've got to make this stand, and we have to do it loudly. We have to do it in a very straightforward manner where we don't have to raise voices, but we have to do what we have to do, and we should not be stopped. When we talk about this neglect in practice, think about it. HBCUs are always underfunded, but it's all part of the Department of Education, but they're underfunded. We got these bills that they supposedly, quote unquote, put on the table, but they're never brought up for vote. When we talk about this silence of the politicians, okay, when they get there to Washington, D.C., especially, they get there and they forget all about the people that sent them there. They're there because when they get those corporate donors tell them one thing: you do as I tell you to do, and you continue to get this money. If you don't do what I ask you to do, you're not going to get funded. Now, I want you to weigh this in your hand. You, the people, corporate donors. You vote to send them to office. They're representing the corporate donors. How does that work? Again, we need to have a media outlet to actually shine some light on this where we can actually make this difference. This is just a start. This is just a start. So what this means what this means here in a nutshell is lip service is cheap, policy is power. If your platform doesn't include housing, justice, voting access, and economic equity, then your solidarity is performative. It's performative. So if it's performative, what is it going to do for you? What's it going to do for you? Nothing. Not one thing. So when we talk about the media's obsession with Black trauma over Black triumph, the mainstream media is they are quick to publicize a negative story about a Black person than they are to do a powerful story, one that's positive and it's got real meaning. Because they've already painted the Black community as being totally negative, not trustworthy, and there are people there that you just cannot be affiliated with. This is the way mainstream media paints the Black community and Black people in general. And so mainstream media often centers Black suffering, always. Police brutality, poverty, incarceration, while sidelining stories of Black excellence, innovation, and joy. It's so rare that you see mainstream media doing stories on Black positivity. They just don't think that exists. They say it does not sell. They say that's not what people want to see. So their thought process is not only are they trying to tell our stories, but they're also telling you this is what you want to hear and this is what you want to see. Is that true? Well, I can tell you this. For those of you that follow this platform, you don't see that. What you see is total Black excellence. And it's highlighted in more than one way. We highlight it via the show, where we have our guests get to tell not just their stories, but the work that they're doing in communities. But we also highlight it in our magazine. All highlighted, giving you the Black excellence, not only that you strive to see, but what you want to be. How you can take that inspiration and motivation. But when it comes to mainstream media, that just doesn't exist. So when we talk about this trauma as clickbait, okay, they always have viral footage of violence against Black bodies, drives engagement, but rarely leads to sustained change. The narrative imbalance is that films and news cycles disproportionately highlight pain, like 12 Years a Slave, Them, Two Distant Strangers, while stories of Black joy, genius, and legacy remain a niche. When we talk about the mental health toll, there's constant exposure to trauma, imagery, which re-traumatizes viewers and reinforces a limited view of Black identity. So the thing is, there's plenty of parts of when people look for entertainment and the way you want that entertainment. But when those movies, such as the ones that I named, when those movies came out, those movies were not projected in a positive light. What it did was they projected, especially 12 Years a Slave, they projected that movie to be Black suffrage, And this is what the life is as a slave. No life outside of being a slave, but we can tell you about the life of being a slave. I'm sure that you guys have got to be sick of seeing things like that. But in the process of being sick of seeing this, you've got to raise your voice. Your voice needs to be heard. Our voices need to be heard. We need to just let it know that we don't take this craziness that, with people trying to think for us. We're in the 21st century now. We didn't just get here to the 21st century by chance. We got here because we have the wherewithal and the gumption to do what's necessary in order to not only to survive, but to get here and to be that difference that we choose to see. With this being said, we're more than our pain. Black history is not just struggle, it's strategy, survival, and brilliance. Let's tell the whole story. And so, if we're going to tell that whole story, that means that we need to talk about the thievery and how this got to be where it is right now, because it's all about thievery. All about thievery. The ones that steal are quick to cast that stone on someone else just to get the light off of them. So the real thieves make it look like which goes through our mainstream media, they make it look like that Black people are the thieves. Black people are the murderers. Black people are the ones that aren't qualified to work because they have these Fortune 500, Fortune 1000 companies. This is what they built off of thievery. Off of thievery. And change the game on a dime. This is what's causing a problem right now in America. But the way they're setting this up to pit Black against white. That is, those that are not in that 1%. So you can just go at it and you can just do destruction. Because, us at the bottom, we the people at the bottom don't matter. Well, that's a farce. That's a farce. That's a farce. We don't need to engage in that. Engaging in that gives them just exactly what they want. What we need to be engaging in is building our communities and doing the things that we know that we're supposed to be doing in order to keep our communities strong. And to put this topping, this icing on this cake, is to talk about Stephen A. Smith and Van Jones, because this performative allyship that they got going on, it really is disgusting to know that these people even have melanin in their skin. Both figures have faced criticism for centering themselves in moments of racial crisis, offering commentary that often aligns with establishment narratives rather than community advocacy. Like Van Jones praised Trump's criminal justice reform while downplaying broader system harm. His emotional reactions on air often feel disconnected from grassroots realities. Stephen A. Smith frequently critiques Black athletes and entertainers with harshness, while soft pedaling system critiques, raising questions about whose interests he's protecting. And the performative allyship defined is public gestures of support that lack substance, accountability, or risk, often used to maintain access and visibility without challenging power structures. So, what these guys are doing is they're sitting there on these news stations. It got to the point that Van Jones even had a little show on CNN, but he's always at the desk and he's always talking about, the good things that, the good policies that Trump is passing, what they're doing, and talked about his friendship with Charlie Kirk and wanted everybody to know that Charlie Kirk actually sent him a text message the day before he died or the day he died, whichever one. which is nonsensical because who in the world would want to tell somebody that? Stephen A. Smith, you know, has got this love of folk in the sports world for some strange reason, which I really don't understand why. Because he sits there and he totally, if he could, he would destroy as many black careers as he possibly could because he feels like it's all about him and that he is the man. But to make this even worse, is nobody even called. Well, he got called out one time on air where he's never even played the sport. Never even played. Well, I think he said he played in high school. Played in high school. Never played professionally. But he knows the games of football and basketball like there's no tomorrow. Really, Stephen? Really? Well, you can sit there and you can try to destroy careers instead of talking about the things that you're doing behind closed doors on that failed ESPN network. And that's what I'm trying to understand as well. Why are people still supporting ESPN, which has got there's some issues that they have at ESPN that they stop publicizing how bad that network is. They stop publicizing just how bad that network is. But yet and still, a lot of sports fans say they need that ESPN. They need that ESPN. They need to see First Take with Stephen A. Smith. Which you can see the negativity just flowing off his face. Even when it comes out his mouth, the rhetoric is just sickening. But he's got those kind of supporters apparently, which I find strange. But that kind of allyship really does nothing when it comes to our community because, allyship isn't about airtime, it's about action. If your advocacy doesn't cost you comfort, it's not allyship, it's performance. Because if you're going to stand up for what's real, that means you need to speak. That means you need to speak. You see, I think the difference in why we cannot have, or why we do not at this point have larger media outlets, is because there's that fear of that much truth that's going to come out that people will not only start to follow, but start to learn a whole lot more and better situations as to how to live their lives and how to best move forward and take care of their lives, their families, their communities, and build their communities. And know that people are relying on the Black community to spend money outside of its community. Now, we've got $1 trillion spending power. And you can go and you can buy Dolce & Gabbana. You can go and you can buy Versace. You can buy Louis Vuitton. You can buy Nike. You can buy Toomey bags. You can buy Birkin bags. You can do all of this, but you can't even support your community. The situation we're in right now is for that very, very reason. Those top 1%ers here in this country is doing a divide and conquer on this whole entire country, pitting Black against white to try to force this race war that they've talked about for years and years and years. But I hope people start to listen and realize it's not even about that. This is not about that. This is about that money. This is about that money. They want your money. They want you to keep going spending outside your community instead of building your community. Build your community. Build your community. That's what we need to be doing. We have several podcasts that you guys need to go and check out. That's talking about not just the positivity, but the impacts of what they have in the community and what they're actually talking about. But why is it so hard to go and support the Black media? Why is that so hard? That's what I need to understand. We've had newspapers that have failed because of one, we know that in order to have a strong press, that you have to have what they call you've got to have people that's spending, that is placing ads in your paper. And you have to have all kind of allyships and partnerships and things of that nature. That's understandable. But also from the subscription perspective, if you know what your target audience is and where you're hitting at, and this is what you're doing for your audience, why is the audience not supporting? We have to do our part. We're not doing our part. We're actually allowing these people to continue to exploit our communities, make them poor, and we don't have anything to say about it. We've got to change that. We have got to change that. So when we talk about, I want to tell you guys about where we're going with some of these outlets, because I want to first start with tell you guys about AMIBW, the magazine. Because it's a platform for legacy and liberation. AMIBW, the magazine, is more than a publication. It's a cultural archive, a civic classroom, and a mirror reflecting Black excellence, resilience, and truth. It's where advocacy meets artistry. Now, just in that point alone, and being legacy driven, AMIBW centers stories that uplift marginalized voices, challenge systemic neglect, and celebrate communal triumph. Educational powers. Each issue breaks down civic processes, historical context, and actionable strategies for empowerment, making complex issues accessible to everyday readers. Representation does matter, because let's go with Troy Long, Dr. V. Boykin, and AMIBW showcases leaders who redefine what it means to thrive while being Black in America. Now, when we talked about Troy Long has done a wonderful thing with the CTE program in New Jersey. He was a great guest on the show that showcased and highlighted what he does at his school and how that trickles down into the community. Dr. V. Boykin, she talked about how her life started and how she used the resilience that she had to get to a particular stage in her life where she was able to go back and get 4 degrees, including a PhD, and has made her life that much better. But, this is just the beginning for AMIBW, the magazine. You see, we've got magazines like Essence, we've got Ebony, we used to have Jet. Those magazines are still doing what they do right now. That even includes, with Essence, they do that annual Essence Festival. And if any of you that have not gone and you've gotten the opportunity to go to those workshops and seminars that they have that's down there, you would go and you would learn an enormous amount of things about Black culture, but also the things that they're doing to help build community. This is where we should be going, pledging our support. These are the things that we should be doing. But you see, if you decide that you want to go and you want to spend all your money on Vogue, Vogue has nothing in there that's going to contribute to the Black community. Vogue talks about clothes. Talks about clothes. The models, you have a few Black models in there, but the models are white. They're Latino. You got a very low ratio of those that have got melanin in their skin that's in that magazine. But it's considered to be a living legacy. For who? For who? We're talking about Black media. We're talking about black media. When are we going to pledge that support? When does that support system comes in? Because we all have to do it. So AMIBW is just reporting the moment. Okay, we're shaping the movement. We tell stories that don't just inform, but they transform. You know, we're trying to catch up to those magazines like Essence and Ebony. They've already set the standard. They've already set the standard. We're trying to catch up to that. That's where we're striving to be. But I do hope that seeing positive images and positive stories and reading those positive stories are things that can help you to transform and transcend into community building and supporting Black media, because we really need to have that. We need to have that. And so, you know, I'm going to give you guys names of quite a few podcasts that are out there that are doing different things. We've got Career Education Learning Center podcast, and that's primarily, you know, talking with college students and where they want to go, you know, when they graduate college, when they want to get from high school to college, you know, learning about these young people that are actually trying to live their lives as best as they possibly can. You know, we got the Don Lemon show. Don is not on CNN. He's not on X. He's now has a better platform that actually streams via YouTube. But he's giving you the news that's about the community and the things that we need to learn and know, and learn how to move and shake and make things easier for ourselves. You got Smith the Speaker. You know, that's a podcast that's out there in on the West Coast. It's in Oakland. And that's a really good show as well, because again, you get to learn about community and culture and things that are transcending out there that's happening, and how they can best make things a whole lot better. We've got What's Your Motive podcast. That podcast primarily is about building from an educational perspective as well. But it talks to individuals, you know, to give people the opportunity to speak about who they are and what they are, and what it is that's happening in their lives, and you know how things can get better, or what you can do to make it better. Um, you've got the podcast Changing the Narrative. That too is a great show, because you know that is making it taking it from the negative perspective and making it positive and showing you that positivity. You got Indisputable, which takes hard political issues and push them out and tell you how best or what is worse about this when it comes to the Black community. You got the Karen Hunter show. Most of you know who Karen Hunter is. Karen has a great show. I've listened to her several times as well. And she has a great show. She hits the issues just like everybody else, but you know, just so you know as well, she also has a show on Sirius XM. She's on Urban View. Good show. We've got the AI chatbot. That's with one of my connections here that's on LinkedIn. You know, it's a nice podcast that's basically all about the community to help people to transcend into the AI generation. Um, we got the Dr. Whitty Today show. Dr. Whitty has a really great show, and it too is about the community. We're talking about building our community. Now, we're a small segment And we're small fish in this big old pond when it comes to black media. But we are black media. And we need support from people like you all out there to help us to get to that point, to continue to amplify these messages that you need to receive, but everybody that's around and affiliated with you need to receive these messages, because when you see better, you do better. It's all about the positivity. It's all about the positivity. So, um, as we just go over to um, we go over to the danger of misrepresentation. Now, this is something that I think you guys really need to pay close attention to, because there is a lot of danger when we're talking about misrepresentation. We're talking about tokenism, which is erasure. Um, we're talking about, oh God, wait a minute, hold on one second here. We're talking about tokenism, which is the context is the illusion and the inclusion, a superficial gesture that allows institutions to claim diversity while maintaining power structures. Erasure is its silent partner. The act of sidelining, simplifying, or ignoring the full humanity of marginalized people. Um, when they talk about media distortion and public policy, okay, there we're talking about, when we talk about what needs to come to our communities and how we need to get that message out to people in the various black communities. There's a problem in doing that, and they find a way to silence it. They find ways to block those messages because it's like it's a problem for people of color to actually gather and to become one and to unify. And so, because somebody else doesn't want that, that does not mean that we should stop trying to do this, because we have to do this. And we talk, the emotional toll of being misrepresented is to the point of where you can't even tell your own story. So, if you can't tell your story, how is it that you think that people are really going to listen to you? So, when we go back and we talk about this tokenism, and what it does and why it is what it is. You see, these are things that we have to make sure that we are not, and I repeat, we have to repeat that we are not going to be silenced in any shape, form, or fashion, because with us, our voices are what we have. And if we don't use what we have, then that means that we lose it. So So just to go back and let me just get these key points here. When we talk about that tokenism, we're talking about the symbolic inclusion. That is hiring one black employee, or casting one black character, or inviting one black speaker is not equity. It's optics. When we talk about erasure through oversimplification, token figures are often stripped of complexity, reduced to stereotypes, or used to validate the status quo. When we talk about long term harm, we're talking about tokenism reinforces the idea that marginalized people are interchangeable, exceptional only when convenient, and disposable when inconvenient. Now, I want you to just sit on that and think about that for a minute. And I want you to think about this. When, at any given point in time, would you say that it's fit to say that, let me hire one black person and I'm good? Let me cast one black character in this movie and I'm good. And let me invite this one black speaker and I'm good, because one, the black speaker is going to speak at the end when there's 10 minutes left. The black character is going to die within the first 5 minutes of the movie. And the hiring of that one black person is going to last maybe a year, could be longer. That is, if they say, if as is stated in the workplace, we don't have any issues with you. So how does that turn out to be? But anytime there's a black platform that does not include a white person, then it says you're being discriminatory. And I want to give you, I want to tell you guys, just because this is something that's actually stuck in my craw for a whole 3 seasons now. The title of this show is America in Black and White. And we strive for Black excellence and building marginalized and underserved communities. And, we want to make sure that we're doing what's necessary for our communities. This show does not one time exclude any other ethnicity. The reason they do not come to this show is because there's this uncomfortability of being around and surrounded by Black excellence. This show does not discriminate. Does not. Does not. We've been turned down a couple of times because I have reached out to try to get folk, of other ethnicities to come on the show. We've been turned down. But that's okay. That doesn't stop the Black excellence, because it continues to roll and it's going to continue to shine. The thing is, the shortness or the short-sightedness of a lot of people are there for the wrong reason. And those reasons is that it's not good to be uncomfortable if you're white. But if you're Black, it's okay to be uncomfortable because you get used to it. This is our story now. This is our story. But that's the way we're made to feel. So just when we talk about tokenism says you're here because you need to be seen. Erasure says you're not here because we don't want you to be heard. Together, they maintain the illusion of progress while silencing the truth. Now, when you think about that, you can think of two people that I mentioned earlier. You can think of Stephen A. Smith, and you can also think of Vernon Jones. Not Vernon Jones, I'm sorry. No, I was going to been a wrong name. I'm sorry. But Van Jones. And, you can think of those two people because they have truly set the standard of what it is to be a token. And that's not even in a good way. Because I want you to, for those of you that don't remember this, but remember Van was fired by the Obama administration. He was fired by the Obama administration. And, Stephen A. Smith rose up in a way that, most people probably wouldn't believe, but he did. Congratulations to him. But that's not a person I would like to be affiliated with, because I will not be silenced. We cannot be silenced. We cannot bow down to somebody that's going to stand for something that's going to repress our communities. We cannot. We cannot. And so I think the support of that makes it even worse. But I'm going to tell you guys this, because this is something that's been on my mind even worse. When we talk about, folks doing things via social media and so forth, I don't know how many of you guys heard about the Karen Lacey story, the young man that played football at LSU. Well, that happened in Louisiana, the great state of Louisiana. Louisiana. Well, the police came up with this lie, and it's that I mean they're showing this video now all over the place now, and saying that this young man caused the death of an individual. Now, what spurred that on and made it even worse? There's this gentleman, Jack Mack. You can find him also on X. Jack Mack, JACKMAC, put out this false story that this young man had done this and he must be guilty because he was on the sideline celebrating with his teammates after scoring a touchdown. He hyped up this story so much that this young man, after being arrested, and they couldn't arrest him, but they did arrest him, or they was trying to arrest him, but he goes and he commits suicide. And they screwed up his draft status and everything. This kid was going to be a high round draft pick in the NFL. They then put this fake story all over social media that he contributed to the death of an individual when he didn't. You see, nobody has told Kyron's story. No one has told Kyron's story, but everybody knows who did this, who put out this false lie that contributed to this young man taking his life. He was innocent. Innocent. He was innocent. Now, again, nobody is saying that one whole group of folk holds that bearing, but I'm going to tell you this. When you have a police department that actually they're showing the policemen coercing people's stories, paying them to lie, and you want to scorn this young man's name, this is where we know that there are two forms of justice, because the Justice Department should have taken that up from the beginning and shut that down. The reason why they didn't shut it down is because of the person that died. I'll just put it to you like that. I mean, there's nothing good about that at all. Nothing. And then on top of that, again, so just letting you know, see, this is how media, mainstream media does this thing, but we don't have enough people to actually counteract that, because we don't have big enough media companies to combat this. This same thing that took place when this Charlie Kirk guy gets killed. Now, he gets killed at Utah State University, or some Utah school up in Utah. And they get mad with the HBCUs, and now they want to attack HBCUs where they go on shutdown. Media should have been out in front of that in the beginning. Mainstream media did not even cover that. They didn't even cover that. They waited until weeks later to bring that on mainstream media. But there was many folk around social media platforms and shows like this that was putting that out and letting people know how this thing has gotten to be so crazy. But that's not it. Now, of course, I know most of you have heard the situation of what happened with Mark Sanchez, former NFL quarterback for the Jets. failed quarterback at that. He goes and attacks a truck driver. The truck driver, in self-defense, stabs him, and to get away from him because he attacked him. Went all in his truck and everything. But there's this a podcaster that's on X. The name is Dan Dockich. He said that happened to Mark Sanchez because of black people. Now his name is Dan Dockich, Dandakich, on X. He said that happened because of black folks. So just in case you don't get the thing, everything that happens is because of black folks. Now there ain't nobody black around that whole situation. But these are the stories that people are putting out that's circulating and going viral. They're going viral. We have to be able to combat this. Because if we don't, then we're going to have some suffrage that we really don't need. We don't need that. This is not about divisiveness. This is about standing up and telling the truth. You see, they want to start out by saying, okay, you get this 1 month, you get Black History Month. No. That's not the way that goes. Black history is 365 days a year, including a leap year. Because Black history is American history, not a month. So just remember, all platforms that are listening, we have to go to 365 because that's what we do here at America in Black and White. We do Black history 365 days a year. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about those heroes and those that matters most, that's got the most influence on people's lives, on people's careers. Because we need to understand why, what these people have done, and how you can do that comparison as to how it motivated you. Some people like to grandstand and play games, but playing games with innocent lives, that don't get it. So the media doesn't just reflect reality, it shapes it. When coverage distorts facts, sensationalizes trauma, or ignores systemic context, it influences public opinion and policy priorities. The lies that go across the mainstream media affect all kind of policy. Now, when Black people are being constantly killed by the police, harassed by the police for no reason, or now they're hanging people again, it's always sensationalized on trauma from the 18th century. We're in wanting to carry out these stories, again, we can keep pushing, which is what we should be doing, but we've got to get a larger media outlet that's going to amplify our stories and tell our stories. We need that, and we need that desperately, because the way we're being distorted in the media, heaven help us. We've made it this far, but now we're in a different time. We're in a different time. So when we talk about the media, we talk about them, the agenda setting power. Media decides what issues are urgent, often sidelined, structural injustice in favor of clickbait or partisan drama. And the fear is a political tool. Sensational coverage of crime, protests, or immigration can stroke public fear, lead to reactionary policies rather than thoughtful reform. And the selective storytelling, Black communities are often portrayed through the lens of crisis, not innovation, skewing public understanding and legislation response. Meaning a whole bunch of things here, because all of this comes back to what's happening in our community. You know, our stories aren't urgent enough for mainstream media. All the positivity that we do is not good for mainstream media. So you're going to have to take this road that we're doing, like this show here tonight, to get those situations, to get those roles, to get this kind of show tonight that's telling you we need you to support Black media. We need you. That's a fact. We need that support because it's a fact also that not all skin folk are kinfolk. So, we have to do what's necessary in order to get our stories out and make sure that, it's done in the best way possible. And so when they use fear as a political tool, you know, the sensationalized stories that's going across mainstream media at this present moment is the government shutdown and the militarizing, of the military in certain cities and states. That's taken over the media. That's taken over the media. So the people don't count, but the people do count because it's the people that they want to go and harass and put in these camps and deport them and do all these other things to them. We shouldn't be supporting that. We should not be supporting that. But also at the same time, most of us knew what was coming. And so we're just on that preparedness thing. It's where we need to be. And when we talk about selective storytelling, you know, for our communities, there's no innovation when it comes to us in mainstream media. There's no innovation. We have to show this innovation on smaller platforms like this one. But in order for it to get to where it needs to be, we need your support. We need your support. When media distorts the truth, policy follows fiction. We don't just need better coverage, we need courageous storytelling that centers justice, not ratings. Who cares about ratings? We're talking about lives. We're talking about lives. So, the emotional toll of being misrepresented, by your own is there's a unique pain in being misrepresented by those who share your identity, whether it's public figures, institutions, or community leaders who echo dominant narratives instead of changing or challenging them. You have internalized gatekeeping. Some Black voices elevated by mainstream platforms may dilute their message to maintain access, leaving others feeling betrayed or erased. The conflict of that, the identity conflict, when your truth is denied or distorted by someone who looks like you, it can trigger deep emotional dissonance, questioning belonging, safety, and solidarity. Psychological impact of that is the misrepresentation can lead to burnout, self-doubt, and emotional isolation, especially for those doing frontline advocacy or storytelling. So when we talk about that, it's a fact that our voices, you know, being elevated by mainstream platforms, whew, that's not going to happen. It's going to be diluted. It's just like putting a Coke in a big old glass of ice and letting it sit there. It dilutes, dilutes, dilutes. And when it's all diluted, there's no ice and you just see soda. And when you drink it, you're drinking Coke water. That's what mainstream media does to Black voices. That's what it does to Black stories. But never fear, a lot of us are here to actually get those stories out. But we need you guys to support us as we put this content out because it's definitely real. And with the identity conflict, you know, I'm sorry, but when they talk about truth, they don't really mean truth because it's denied. You can't tell the truth when it comes to this because the identity conflict is if I've already painted you as being a criminal, you can't come back and be a good guy. You can't come back and be a good guy. I've already told folks you're a criminal and that you steal and that you're a possible murderer, things of that nature. That's what mainstream media does. That's what it does to Black folk. And they get a pass. They get a pass. And psychological impact of this is that, when people like myself and other platforms, are like going through and constantly trying to combat lies and telling you why it's a lie and you have to do it every day. Whew, hours on the hour. You have to do that. That's burnout. And you start to lose interest, which is what they want. But never fear because America in black and white is not going anywhere. It's not going anywhere. So I just want us to be able to do all those things that we talk about doing. And it's one thing to be silenced by the system, it's another to be misrepresented by someone who claims to speak for you. That's not just betrayal, it's spiritual violence. We don't need mainstream media speaking for Black people because they don't represent Black people. We need Black people speaking for Black people because we know the struggle. We know the plight. We know the what the fight was. We know what the struggle is. We know how we've come through it, and we know how to continue to survive. If you're not Black, you can't tell this story. When we talk about history, talk about Black history, that is, anyway. We've got so many legacy icons out there to this day. So many that it's like it's gotten to the point that even those folk that believe that they are that they believe in the spiritual realm and that the spiritual realm is going to get them through. Excuse me. I just want to know how many of you really believe in the Bible and believe in Christ. I asked that question for one reason. How many of you can honestly believe that mistreating folk the way certain sectors of this country have done for hundreds and hundreds of years, how can you possibly believe that what you say is a legacy for you is yours? I just don't understand it. Tell me how you do that. If you can tell me how you do that, I mean, that's the one thing that would just totally take me all the way to another place. Um, there's a couple of comments here. Um, there's one that says, buy black and support products and services to replace the ones you patronize outside your communities. Another comment here from IMTV 360. Black folks set the trends, those fashion trends, that is. And another one from IMTV 360. We believe. Yes, sir, we do. We definitely believe. And I'll tell you like this, as we go through this, we make it through this times, we make it through all the other times as well, because it's real. That struggle is definitely real. And we have to do everything necessary in order to make this what it's supposed to be. And so, um, as we, as we are not waiting for permission to be seen, we are reclaiming the mic, the pen, and the lens because our stories are sacred and our truth is non negotiable. In other words, you can't pay me for my story. You can't pay me to shut up. Excuse me. You can't pay me to do those things. Um, so, what I would like for you guys to know is that um, for each and every last one of these subjected areas that was just spoken on, I need to have each and every last one of you out there that's watching this show. I need you guys to make sure that you're supporting Black media. I need you guys to make sure that you're supporting Black businesses. I need you guys to make sure that you're building your community because building your community means more than anything you could ever imagine. The standard and the pace is it's like none other, and it does everything that it said it would do. So let me give you guys this call to action. If you're listening tonight, I want you to do more than nod in agreement. Subscribe to AMIBW, the magazine, Until America in Black and White, and support and share this episode. Ask your workplace where their money goes after February. And most importantly, tell your story, whether through a podcast, blog, or pulpit. Your truth matters. We're not waiting, we're building, and we're not asking for permission. So that's it in a nutshell, to where when it comes down to it, we're going to get our own stories out. Thanks, but no thanks for those that call themselves trying to do it for us. We don't need you to do that. We don't need you to do it. So, well, we've got another comment here in the chat. Um, from IMTV 360 says record and document what happens in your community. That's a really good point there. That's a really good point because, I think the more when you record and you document, you've got a timestamp. And that timestamp is everything that you're going to need. So I say for those of you that are watching on all our streaming channels, I appreciate you for taking the time to watch this show tonight. Because these are some things that need to be said, and just in that whole process, I hope that you guys, especially those who are looking on that are watching on the YouTube channels, if you could please support us by subscribing and enabling all notifications. I really appreciate that. Um, Also, for those of you that listen to this message, I hope you got a clear cut understanding as to what this message was, because it definitely means a million and one things. So, you guys have a great evening. I thank you all for tuning in tonight and watching this episode of American Black and White. Tune in tomorrow night, 6 o'clock, as we have another great show. And we will continue to color conversations on the canvas of America. Oh, I forgot something. Um, One last thing. Um, I will tell you my most influential uh, persons um, in Black history that's influenced my life and career. One of them is Langston Hughes, and the other one is Malcolm X. And my reason for both of those people is that they both refuse to bow down and not be who they are. They were unapologetic, not just in the tone of their voice, but in the meaning of their voice. So what that meant to me is that when we talk about Malcolm X got even stronger when he took the trip to Mecca, and when he returned back to the States, he was even stronger. And what he did was he took that strength and he amplified his voice across this whole entire world. Everybody knew who he was. Langston Hughes, part of the Harlem Renaissance. Langston Hughes is one of the influential people in my life and career, because he he truly did some things that made a big difference in how I carried out my life when I became an author, as well as want to do this podcast with my blog and the work I do in accounting and consulting. Um, just being unapologetic as to not only who I am, but the character that I display. And so when people meet me, they get who they meet. We don't do falsities, we don't do play. It's all real and authentic. So I want to thank you guys again for watching this show tonight. Join us tomorrow night for another episode of American Black and White, where we will continue the color conversations on the canvas of America. I'm your host, Charles King, signing out.